Viktor Nowak przemawia.
Viktor Nowak speaking, the janitor whispered into his phone, Polish words flowing from his mouth like he'd never left Warsaw. Isabella Marchand froze 3 feet away, the billionaire owner of the entire hotel chain, staring at the man in the blue uniform, scrubbing her marble floors. Behind her, the facility manager's face turned purple with rage. Victor's hand trembled. This call from Jagiellonian University could change everything. The 7th time applying for the linguistics scholarship, his 7-year-old daughter Sophia waiting at home, 6 years of night shifts finally ending. Or it could cost him the only job he had left. Why was the billionaire's expression shifting from anger to something else entirely? But before we find out what happens next, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Drop a comment telling us where you're listening from right now. All right, let me tell you how a former linguistics professor with a PhD ended up scrubbing floors at midnight. 6 years earlier, Viktor Nowak's life looked completely different. At 28, he'd just finished his PhD in linguistics from Warsaw University. Fluent in 6 languages, Polish, English, French, Italian, Mandarin, and Russian, 2 published papers in international journals, job offers from prestigious universities. The world stretched before him, vast and bright. Then he met Helena at an academic conference in Boston. She was American, a doctoral student in neuroscience with wild curly hair and a laugh that made everyone in the room turn to look. They talked for 6 hours straight that first night, switching between English and broken attempts at each other's languages, laughing at their mistakes. "Your English is perfect," she'd said. "Your Polish is terrible," he'd replied, grinning. "Then you'll have to teach me." 3 months later, they were married. Quick, impulsive, the kind of love that doesn't wait for logic. Victor accepted a position at Boston University. Helena continued her research at MIT. They lived in a tiny apartment in Cambridge that cost too much and had radiators that clanged all night, and they'd never been happier. Sophia was born a year later, arriving early on a February morning during a snowstorm. Victor held his daughter, this tiny, perfect thing, and felt his life click into place. Professor, husband, father, everything he'd ever wanted. Their routine became sacred. Saturday mornings at the diner on the corner, the one with the cracked vinyl booths, and the waitress who remembered their order. Helena would steal bites from Victor's pancakes while pretending she wasn't hungry. Sophia would color on the paper placemats, making elaborate drawings of houses with families inside. "Look, Daddy, that's you and Mommy and me. It's beautiful, Mała Gwiazdka, little star." Helena didn't speak Polish, but she learned the important words. Kocham cię, I love you. Dobranoc, good night. Mała Gwiazdka, little star. Life was small, predictable, and absolutely perfect. Then came the accident. Helena was walking home from the lab. It was late. She'd stayed to finish an experiment. Victor had offered to pick her up, but she'd said no. "It's only 6 blocks. I need the fresh air." The driver was texting, ran a red light at 40 miles per hour. Helena never saw it coming. The call came at 11:47 p.m. Victor was reading Sophia a bedtime story when his phone rang. The hospital. The words "severe traumatic brain injury" and "induced coma" and "we're doing everything we can." He grabbed Sophia, called his neighbor, drove to Mass General with his heart in his throat. Helena was in surgery for 8 hours. When they finally let Victor see her, she was unrecognizable. Tubes and machines and bandages. The neurosurgeon, a kind woman with tired eyes, explained everything carefully. The impact caused significant damage to the frontal and temporal lobes. "We've relieved the pressure, but the next 72 hours are critical. If she survives, there will likely be permanent cognitive impairment, memory loss, possibly the inability to recognize faces, speak, or care for herself." Victor nodded, absorbing words that didn't seem real. "Will she remember me?" he asked quietly. "I don't know. I'm sorry." Helena woke up 5 days later. Victor was sitting beside her bed, Sophia asleep in his lap. He saw her eyes open and his heart leaped. "Helena, sweetheart, it's me. It's Victor." She looked at him with polite confusion. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" The next 6 months were a nightmare Victor wouldn't wish on anyone. Helena relearned to walk, relearned to speak, but her memory never came back. Not long-term, anyway. She could remember things for a few hours, then they'd vanish like they'd never happened. Every morning, Victor was a stranger. Every morning, he had to explain who he was. Every morning, her face showed that same polite confusion. "I'm your husband. We have a daughter. Her name is Sophia." "Oh, that's nice." The medical bills piled higher than Victor could pay. His insurance covered some, not enough. He used their savings, sold their car, moved to a smaller apartment in a worse neighborhood, borrowed money from Helena's parents. Boston University was understanding at first. They gave him leave, flexibility, but after 4 months, they needed someone reliable, someone who could actually teach. "We're very sorry, Victor. We hope you understand." He understood. He also understood he had no options left. Helena's parents offered to take her to their home in Oregon. They were retired, had time and resources. They could give her the 24-hour care she needed. Victor couldn't do that while raising a 2-year-old alone. "Come with us," they suggested. "All of you." But Victor saw it in their eyes. The resentment, the blame. Their daughter had been brilliant, vibrant, destined for greatness. Now she was broken, and somehow, irrationally, they blamed the foreign husband who'd taken her to Cambridge, to that lab, to that street corner at that exact wrong moment. So Victor stayed in Boston with Sophia, alone. He applied for jobs, sent hundreds of resumes. Every interview ended the same way. "You have an impressive background, but there's a 6-month gap. My wife was in an accident. I was caring for her." "Of course, we understand. And you have a young daughter? Who watches her if you're working?" "I'll figure it out. We need someone without complications." Door after door closed. The rent came due. The electricity got shut off twice. Sophia needed diapers, food, clothes. Victor swallowed every ounce of pride he had left and took the only job that didn't ask questions about his PhD or his family situation. Night janitor at the Sterling Grand Hotel in downtown Boston. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Scrubbing floors, emptying trash, cleaning bathrooms. Work that didn't require a doctorate in linguistics or fluency in 6 languages. Work that paid minimum wage and left him exhausted. His routine became brutal. Get home at 7:30 a.m., collapsed and smelling like industrial cleaner. Sleep until 2 p.m. while Sophia was at daycare, the cheap one run by the church basement, the one he could barely afford. Pick her up at 3 p.m. Spend afternoons being daddy, making dinner, playing with blocks, reading books in Polish and English. Neighbor Mrs. Chen took Sophia from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. for $50 a week. He couldn't afford not to pay. It was survival, not living. Victor visited Helena every 2 months, the long bus ride to Oregon with Sophia squirming in the seat beside him. Helena would smile at them kindly, the way you smile at strangers. "These are nice visitors," she'd tell the nurse. Every visit broke Victor's heart all over again. "Don't you remember me?" Sophia would ask, 4 years old and confused. "I'm sorry, sweetie, I don't. But you seem very nice." Helena's parents would pull Victor aside with increasingly blunt suggestions. "You're young. She's never getting better. You should move on with your life." But how could he move on? He still wore his wedding ring, still loved her, still waited for her to wake up, even though she already had. Years blurred together. Sophia grew from toddler to kindergartner to first grader. Victor kept scrubbing floors, kept sending applications to universities that never responded, kept visiting a wife who didn't know his name. He applied to graduate programs. Maybe he could go back to school, rebuild his academic career. 7 times he applied to Jagiellonian University in Poland for their prestigious linguistics scholarship. 7 times rejected. More qualified candidates. Gaps in publication history. unable to commit to full-time residency. But Victor kept trying, because he had to show Sophia that you don't give up, that broken things can heal, that life doesn't end just because it falls apart. By 34, Victor Novak existed in a strange limbo. Not quite married to a woman who didn't remember him, not quite single, not quite a professor, not quite just a janitor, just suspended, waiting for something to change. He didn't know change was coming. He didn't know that one phone call, answered at the wrong moment in the wrong place in front of the wrong person, would shatter everything and rebuild it into something he never expected. He just knew he had to keep going, for Sophia, for the memory of who he used to be, for the slim hope that somewhere, somehow, life would make sense again. The phone vibrating in Victor's pocket felt like a bomb going off. He was on his knees in the main lobby of the Sterling Grand Hotel, scrubbing water streaks from the polished marble floor. Midnight, the graveyard shift. Around him, the lobby gleamed, crystal chandeliers, gold accents, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. And there was Bruno Costa, the facility manager, giving his weekly walkthrough with the owner of the entire chain, Isabella Marchand, billionaire, self-made, ruthless. The woman who'd built 20 luxury hotels from nothing and ruled them with an iron fist. She was touring the Boston property, her heels clicking on Victor's freshly cleaned marble. "Everything must be spotless," Bruno was saying in his oily voice. "My team maintains the highest standards." That's when Victor's phone vibrated. He froze. Rule number 1, repeated so often everyone could recite it. Janitorial staff must not, under any circumstances, use personal phones in public areas. But the screen lit up in his pocket, and Victor's heart stopped. Jagiellonian University, Poland, 7 applications, 7 rejections. This could be the 8th rejection, or it could be the call that changed everything. The scholarship that would let him finish his degree, get back into academia, stop working night shifts, pick Sophia up from school like a normal father. Just 1 minute, Victor whispered to himself. He glanced up. Bruno and Isabella had their backs to him, examining a decorative fountain. Quickly, Victor slipped behind a large marble column, pressed the phone to his ear. "Victor Novak speaking," he said in Polish, his voice low. The voice on the other end was Professor Kowalski from Jagiellonian University's Linguistics Department, speaking rapid Polish, discussing Victor's application, asking if his motivation letter had arrived on time. "I sent it 2 weeks ago," Victor explained in Polish, his accent flawless, his grammar perfect. "I was worried it might have been lost in the mail." Every sound around him seemed to disappear. Victor slowly looked up. Isabella Marchand stood 3 feet away, her eyes locked on him, unmistakably surprised. No, more than surprised. Shocked. Beside her, Bruno Costa's face was turning purple with rage. Victor's stomach dropped. "I have to go," Victor said quickly in Polish. "I'll call you back tomorrow." He hung up, stood slowly, his cleaning rag still in one hand. "Novak." Bruno's voice could cut steel. "My office. Now." The walk to Bruno's basement office felt like a death march. Victor could feel the eyes of other night shift workers on him, some sympathetic, others gleeful. Victor was the only person on the cleaning staff with a college degree, and Bruno never missed an opportunity to mock him for it. Bruno's office door slammed shut. 6 years, Novak. 6 years without a single violation, and then this. Bruno sat behind his desk, fingers steepled. Personal phone call, in the main lobby, in front of guests, in front of Mrs. Marchand herself. The call was important. All calls are important. That's why the rule exists. Bruno leaned forward. "You think you're special, because you have some fancy degree, because you speak pretty languages. You're a janitor, Novak, same as everyone else, and janitors don't take phone calls during work hours. I understand. It won't happen again. You're right, it won't, because you're suspended. 1 week, no pay." Victor's world tilted. "Bruno, please. I have a daughter. I need—" You should have thought about that before answering the phone. Bruno gestured to the door. 1 week. Come back next Monday. And Novak? If there's a next time, it won't be suspension. It'll be termination. Now get out. Victor left, feeling numb. 1 week without pay meant late rent, meant explaining to 7-year-old Sophia why they couldn't buy her favorite cereal, meant begging Mrs. Chen to wait for payment. He went back to the lobby to collect his cleaning supplies before leaving. The lobby was quieter now, just a few guests at the front desk. Mr. Novak? Victor turned. A woman stood near the marble columns. Not just any woman. Isabella Marchand. She was about 40, dark hair pulled into a sleek bun, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than Victor's annual rent. She was known for being brilliant, ruthless, impossible to impress. She was his boss, the owner, the person who could fire him with a snap of her fingers. Yes, ma'am? Victor replied carefully in English. You speak Polish. Not a question, a statement. Yes, ma'am. It's my native language. And French? Italian? I've heard you speaking with guests before. Yes, ma'am. I speak 6 languages fluently. Isabella studied him for a long moment. 6 languages. And you're a janitor. Victor didn't know how to respond to that. Come with me, she said suddenly, turning toward the elevators. Victor hesitated. Mrs. Marchand, I've been suspended. I should go home. Consider the suspension cancelled. Come with me. Now. He followed, confused and terrified. They took the elevator to the 12th floor, the corporate office suite. Victor had cleaned these offices before, but only at 3 a.m. when everyone was gone. Isabella's office was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, modern furniture, bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages. She pointed to a chair. Sit. Victor sat, acutely aware of his janitor uniform. Isabella sat behind her desk, her sharp eyes studying him. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Novak. The real story, not the edited version. So Victor told her. About his PhD, about Helena, about the accident, about how a man with a doctorate in linguistics ended up scrubbing floors in the middle of the night. Isabella listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You applied to Jagiellonian University, she finally asked. 7 times. Rejected every time. Why do you keep trying? Victor thought about that. Because I need Sophia to see that this isn't how it ends. That you don't give up just because everything falls apart. You keep trying. Isabella nodded slowly. I have a problem, Mr. Novak. A very large problem. Victor waited. My company is expanding into Eastern Europe. Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania. I need someone who understands the culture, speaks the languages fluently, can navigate local politics and business customs. She leaned forward. My director of international expansion just resigned. Effective next week. He's joining a competitor. I have 3 hotel acquisitions pending in Warsaw, Krakow and Prague that need immediate attention. Victor's heart began racing. I need someone immediately, Isabella continued. Someone who speaks fluent Polish. Someone who understands translation, localization, cross-cultural communication. Someone who can advise me on local business etiquette, political risks, market positioning. She paused. Do you want the job? Victor stared. What? Assistant Director of International Expansion, starting salary 75,000 a year, plus bonuses, plus benefits. Office hours 9 to 5 so you can pick up your daughter from school. Office on this floor. Isabella didn't blink. Do you want the job? Victor's mind spun. This was real. This wasn't some kind of test. Mrs. Marchand, I haven't worked in an office in 6 years. I don't have professional clothes. You have a PhD in linguistics, published papers in international journals, fluency in 6 languages, and most importantly, you have resilience. Anyone can learn office politics. Not everyone can survive what you've survived and still keep trying. She leaned back. So? Yes or no? Victor thought about Sophia, about Mrs. Chen, about Bruno Costa with his sneering smile, about Helena who didn't remember him, about 6 years of scrubbing floors, about 7 rejection letters. Yes, he whispered. Yes. Isabella smiled. Genuinely. Good. You start Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Victor walked out of the Sterling Grand Hotel in a daze. He immediately went to pick up Sophia from Mrs. Chen's apartment, arriving hours earlier than usual. Sophia ran to him, backpack bouncing. "Daddy, you're early!" He scooped her up, spinning her around, laughing for the first time in months. "Yes, baby, and I'm going to be early from now on." "Always?" "Always." That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Victor sat at their tiny kitchen table and cried. Relief, exhaustion, pure disbelieving joy. His life had changed in a single day because of a phone call answered at the wrong moment, in the wrong place in front of the right person. He didn't know it was only the beginning. He didn't know Isabella Marchand had her own reasons for hiring him, reasons she hadn't shared yet. And he didn't know that working so close to her would reveal a secret that would change everything again. Monday morning came, and Victor showed up at the 12th floor at 8:45 a.m., wearing a borrowed suit from a neighbor that was slightly too big. He felt like a fraud. Isabella's executive assistant, a sharp French woman named Margot, showed him to his office. It wasn't large, but it had a window. A window. Victor hadn't had a window in 6 years. "Mrs. Marchand wants to see you at 9:30, Margot said. "Until then, here are the files on the pending acquisitions. Familiarize yourself with them." Victor spent the next hour reading contracts, proposals, market analyses. His brain, dormant for 6 years of physical labor, suddenly woke up. This he understood. This he loved. At 9:30, he entered Isabella's office. She was on the phone, speaking rapid French with someone in Paris. She gestured for him to sit. Victor waited, listening to her ruthlessly negotiate contract terms. When she hung up, she turned to him with a brief smile. "Surviving your first hour?" "Yes, ma'am." "Drop the ma'am. You're not a janitor anymore. Call me Isabella." "Isabella." Victor tested the word. It felt strange. "Better. Now, let's get to work. The Warsaw deal closes Friday. I need you to review all contracts, identify any cultural or linguistic pitfalls, and prepare a briefing by Wednesday. Can you do that?" "I can." "Good. You'll travel with me to Warsaw on Thursday. We're closing the deal in person on Friday. Bring your passport." Victor blinked. "Travel? But Sophia?" "Bring her. I'll book an extra room. She can see Warsaw. Do you have family there?" "No, not anymore. My parents died years ago." "Then it'll be a business trip for you and a vacation for her. Margot will arrange everything." Isabella returned to her papers. "Any questions?" Victor had 1,000 questions, but one was most important. "Why me? Why did you give me this chance?" Isabella paused, pen hovering over documents. Then she looked up, and for a moment Victor saw something in her eyes he didn't expect. Vulnerability. "Because," she said quietly, "someone gave me a chance once, when I had nothing, and it changed my entire life." She went back to her papers. "Now get to work, Victor. You have contracts to review." Victor spent the next 3 days immersed in work. He reviewed contracts, identified issues, suggested changes. His mind, starved for intellectual challenge, devoured everything. He also started noticing things about Isabella. How she arrived at the office at 7 a.m., always the first person there. How she worked until 8 p.m., always the last to leave. How she was ruthless in meetings but kind to junior employees. How she spoke 5 languages but struggled with Spanish. How she ate lunch at her desk, always alone. How she was brilliant and powerful and completely, utterly lonely. On Thursday, Victor and Sophia flew to Warsaw with Isabella on her private jet. Sophia was ecstatic. "Daddy! Daddy! Look! Clouds!" Isabella watched Sophia with a soft smile Victor had never seen before. "Do you have children?" Victor asked. The smile disappeared. "No, never had time." "Were you ever married?" "Once. Long time ago. Didn't work out." She turned to the window, ending the conversation. In Warsaw, Isabella was a force of nature. She negotiated in Polish that she'd clearly practiced but hadn't mastered, so Victor translated, interpreted, smoothed over cultural misunderstandings. They closed the deal Friday afternoon. At the celebration dinner, with Sophia finally asleep in the hotel room, Isabella and Victor shared wine and talked. "You did exceptional work," Isabella said. "The Polish sellers trusted you immediately. They respect you," Victor corrected. "I just facilitated communication." "Don't diminish yourself. You have a gift." She swirled wine in her glass. "Can I ask something personal?" Victor nodded. "Helena, your wife, do you still love her?" The question caught him off guard. I don't know. I love who she was, but that person doesn't exist anymore. So what am I loving? A memory. Have you thought about moving on?" "How can I? I'm technically still married. She's still alive. She just isn't here." Isabella nodded slowly. "I understand that. Loving someone who doesn't exist anymore. Your ex-husband?" "No, someone else." She didn't elaborate. They sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own lost loves. Something shifted that night. A connection formed. Not romantic. Not yet. Just understanding. Recognition of shared loneliness. Back in Boston, Victor threw himself into his new role. He worked on acquisitions in Krakow, Prague, Budapest. He traveled with Isabella, became indispensable. He also became her confidant. On late flights, at dinners, after meetings, they talked about life, about loss, about dreams deferred. He learned that Isabella had grown up poor in a small town in France, that she'd built her empire from nothing, that she'd married young to a man who left her when she refused to give up her career for children, that she was 42 and sometimes woke up terrified that she'd traded love for success and now had too much of one and nothing of the other. "You're not alone," Victor said one night. "You have hundreds of employees, business partners, friends." "Employees aren't family, Victor, and I don't have friends. I have contacts. There's a difference. You have me. And Sophia." Isabella looked at him for a long moment. "Do I?" Something passed between them. Something dangerous. Victor pushed it down. He wasn't ready. Still wore his wedding ring. Still visited Helena every 2 months. Still trapped in limbo. But the seed was planted. And over the following months, it grew. 6 months into his new job, Victor's life was unrecognizable. He was making real money, rented a better apartment, bought appropriate clothes. Sophia was in a better school. He picked her up every day at 3:30 p.m., and they spent afternoons together doing homework, playing at the park, being father and daughter. Sophia flourished. She'd always been a happy child, but now she glowed. Her teacher commented on how much she'd improved, how much more confident she'd become. Victor flourished too. His brain was alive again. He published 2 new papers in academic journals. Jagiellonian University accepted him into their master's program. He could complete it online at his own pace. And then there was Isabella. They worked together every day, traveled together frequently, had dinner together after meetings. Somewhere along the way, colleague became friend, became something more. Victor couldn't pinpoint when it happened. Maybe it was the night in Prague when she laughed at one of his jokes, and her laughter hit him like a punch to the chest. Maybe it was the morning in Budapest when she showed up at the hotel cafe wearing jeans and a t-shirt, hair down, looking 10 years younger and completely different from the impeccable executive. Maybe it was the moment in Boston when Sophia drew a picture of my family and included Miss Isabella. Maybe it was all of it, slowly, gradually, until one day he looked at her and realized he didn't see her as his boss anymore. He saw her as Isabella, brilliant and scared and lonely and beautiful, and by the way she looked at him, especially when she didn't think he was watching, he thought maybe she felt the same. But there was Helena. Victor visited her in April, 6 months into his new job. Sophia came with him as always. Helena sat in a sun chair in the nursing home garden, smiling at the sky. She looked peaceful, happy in her simple way. "Helena, Victor said gently, sitting beside her. "It's me, Victor." She turned to him with a polite smile. "Hello, are you new here?" Every time was a punch to the gut. "No, I'm your husband." "Oh," she blinked. "I have a husband?" Sophia gripped Victor's hand. She understood now, at 7 years old, that Mommy was different, that she didn't remember them. It hurt less as she got older, but it still hurt. Helena's parents appeared, hugging Victor and Sophia. They'd aged in the past years, tired from constant care, guilty about their relief that Victor wasn't asking to take Helena back anymore. "How are you, Victor?" Helena's mother asked. "Good. I got a new job, a good one. Sophia's thriving. We're glad for you." She hesitated. "Victor, it's been almost 7 years. Helena's not getting better. She'll never remember you. You know that, don't you?" "I know." "So, when are you going to move on?" Victor looked at Helena, absorbed in watching a bird. She wasn't there. The woman he'd fallen in love with, married, who'd given birth to Sophia. She didn't exist anymore. What remained was a kind stranger in her body. "I don't know," Victor whispered. "You deserve to be happy, deserve love. Helena wouldn't want you to stay alone." "I know, I don't know how to let go." Helena's mother took his hand. "Yes, you do. You're just afraid." "But Victor, you already lost her 7 years ago. Staying married to a ghost doesn't bring her back." Those words echoed the entire trip back to Boston. "Daddy?" Sophia asked on the train. "Do you love Mommy?" "Of course, baby. But she doesn't love you back, because she doesn't remember." Victor felt his throat tighten. "No, she doesn't remember." Sophia was quiet for a long time. Then, "It's okay if you love someone else. It doesn't make Mommy disappear." Victor looked at his 7-year-old daughter, amazed by her wisdom. "When did you get so smart?" "Always been smart." She gave him an impish grin, then turned serious again. "Miss Isabella is nice. She buys me books, and she makes you smile." "Sophia." "Just saying." Sophia returned to her coloring book, ending the conversation. But the seed was planted. 2 weeks later, on a trip to Paris, Victor and Isabella worked late reviewing acquisition documents. It was nearly midnight when they finally finished. "Drink?" Isabella offered. They went down to the hotel bar. Wine, conversation, laughter. Then Isabella went quiet, her fingers tracing the rim of her wineglass. "Can I say something inappropriate?" she asked. Victor's heart raced. "Yes, I'm going to miss you when you eventually leave me." "Leave? I'm not going anywhere." "You will. You're brilliant, Victor. You'll get an academic position, or a better company will poach you. Or you'll realize you deserve better than working for someone like me, someone like you, someone who doesn't know how to be human, who chose hotels over family, who's alone at 42 and will die alone at 82. "Isabella, I'm sorry." She took a sip of wine. "Too much wine. Forget I said anything." Victor took her hand across the table. She froze. "You're not alone," he said quietly, "and you won't die alone. You have me, and Sophia, and 100 people who respect and admire you. Respect isn't love, Victor. No, it's not." They stared at each other. The tension was unbearable. Isabella gently pulled her hand away. "You're still married. Technically. Technically is enough. And I won't be the other woman, even if the first one doesn't know she exists." She stood, left money on the table, and walked away. Victor sat in the bar, heart pounding, realizing he'd crossed a line, realizing he wanted to cross it. But first, he had to let go of the past, and that meant doing the hardest thing he'd ever done. 2 weeks later, Victor flew back to Oregon, alone this time. He sat with Helena in the garden. She smiled at him politely, as always. "Helena," he said gently, "I need to tell you something." "Okay. You don't know me, don't remember me, but we were married 7 years ago. We have a daughter named Sophia. You had an accident and lost your memories." Helena blinked. "Oh, that's sad." "It is, but you're happy now, and that's what matters." "I am happy," she agreed cheerfully. Victor took a deep breath. "Helena, I love you. I always will. But the woman I fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. And I've realized that staying married to someone who doesn't know me isn't honoring you. It's just stopping me from living." Helena was absorbed in watching a bird again. Victor continued anyway. "So I'm going to file for divorce. Your parents agree. I'll make sure you're financially secure for the rest of your life. And I'll bring Sophia to visit. But I need to move forward. I need to live. I hope you understand." Helena turned to him and smiled. "You seem nice. I hope you're happy." She didn't understand. But maybe that was mercy. Victor cried in his rental car for everything that was lost, for everything that could have been, for the Helena who existed and the Helena who remained. But when he stopped crying, he felt lighter. For the first time in 7 years, he called his lawyer, started the divorce papers. Because of Helena's mental incapacity, it would be straightforward. A few months of paperwork, then it would be done. Then he flew back to Boston and went straight to Isabella's office. "I'm getting divorced," he said. Isabella looked up from her computer. "When did you decide that?" "Last week, in Paris, when you said you wouldn't be the other woman. I realized you were right. It's not fair to you, or me, or Helena." "Victor, let me finish." He sat in her chair. "It'll take a few months, but when it's finalized, I'd like to take you to dinner. A proper dinner, not business, just us." Isabella watched him for a long moment. "And if I say no, then I'll accept that, and we'll continue working together professionally, and I'll admire you from a distance and eventually get over it." He met her eyes. "But I hope you don't say no." Isabella didn't answer immediately. Then, slowly, she smiled. "Ask me again when the divorce is finalized." "I will." "Good." They stared at each other, both smiling, both scared, both hopeful. The months that followed were strange. Victor and Isabella worked together as always, but there was an undercurrent now. Anticipation, promise. They didn't touch, didn't cross boundaries, but everyone in the office noticed the change. The way they looked at each other, the way Isabella smiled when Victor entered the room, the way Victor found excuses to walk past her office. Sophia definitely noticed. "So are you and Miss Isabella going to get married?" she asked one day. "I haven't even taken her on a date yet, baby." "But you will." "Yes." "Good. I approve." Victor laughed. "Thank you for your permission, Your Majesty." Sophia curtsied dramatically. The divorce was finalized in November, 7 months after Victor started the process. Helena was now legally under her parents' guardianship. Victor had set up a trust fund for her care. Sophia would visit during holidays. It was surreally simple. A 9-year marriage dissolved in a 15-minute court session. Victor sat in the courthouse with his wedding ring in his hands, the ring Helena had placed on his finger 9 years ago, the ring he'd worn every day since. He put it in his pocket. He wasn't ready to throw it away, but he also wasn't going to wear it anymore. That night he took Isabella to dinner. An elegant restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. Candles, wine, no business, just them. "So," Isabella said, smiling over her menu, "you finally asked me out." "Finally. Took long enough. Some things are worth waiting for." They talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about Sophia and work and dreams and fears. And at the end of the night, when Victor walked her back to her apartment, he hesitated at the door. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "I thought you'd never ask," Isabella whispered. The kiss was soft, tentative, perfect. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. "Why are you crying?" Victor asked. "Because it's been so long since someone made me feel anything." She touched his face. "Why are you crying?" "Because I didn't think I'd ever feel this again, and I'm happy and scared and grateful all at once. Welcome back to life, Victor Novak. Thank you for seeing me when I was just the janitor. You were never just the janitor. You were always you." They kissed again, deeper this time. And Victor Novak, who'd spent 7 years suspended between past and present, finally stepped into the future. It wasn't a betrayal of Helena. It was honoring her, because she would have wanted him to live, to love again, to be happy, and for the first time in 7 years, he was. 18 months after that first phone call in the hotel lobby, Victor Novak stood on a stage in Warsaw, receiving an International Business Innovation Award. Isabella sat in the audience, applauding, proud. Sophia sat beside her, legs swinging, bored but happy. Victor's life was unrecognizable. He was now Senior Vice President of International Expansion for the Marchand Hotel Group. 6-figure salary. Corner office on the 12th floor with harbour views. Published academic papers. Completed his master's degree. Was invited to speak at conferences. And he had Isabella. They'd kept the relationship private for months. Not from shame, but because in the corporate world, relationships between boss and employee were complicated. They didn't want anyone thinking Victor had advanced by sleeping with the boss. But after a year, when Victor had proven his value 10 times over, they went public. Some people gossiped. Most were genuinely happy for Isabella, who'd been lonely for so long. Sophia adored Isabella, called her Bella now. Isabella picked her up from school when Victor travelled, taught her French, bought too many books, loved that child like she was her own. Isabella and Victor didn't live together, not yet. But they spent most nights at each other's places, cooked dinners, watched Sophia do homework, were, in every way that mattered, a family. After the award ceremony, Isabella and Sophia found Victor backstage. "Congratulations," Isabella said, kissing him, "though I wrote half that acceptance speech." "Half? It was 3 words. The 3 most important words." Sophia rolled her eyes. "You guys are gross." "Yes, we are," Victor agreed, scooping her up. "How are you, Mała Gwiazdka? Hungry? Can we eat?" They went to a traditional Polish restaurant. Pierogis and bigos and poppy seed cake. Sophia tried to learn Polish from Victor but struggled with the grammar. She was better at French, which Isabella taught her. They were a strange blended family, but it worked. After Sophia went to bed that night, Isabella and Victor stood on the hotel balcony looking at Warsaw's lights. "Do you regret it?" Isabella asked softly, moving on from Helena. "No, Helena's not there anymore. Not really. And Sophia needs stability, love, a future. So do I. You gave us that. You gave yourself that." "I just opened a door." "You did more than that." Victor turned to her. "You saw me, when no one else did, when I didn't see myself." Isabella leaned into his embrace. "You saved me too, you know. I was drowning in work and loneliness. You reminded me there's more to life than meetings and acquisitions. We're good for each other. We are." They stood in comfortable silence. Then Victor asked something he'd been thinking about for months. "Marry me." Isabella froze. "What?" "Marry me. Not now. Not tomorrow, but someday, when you're ready. I want to spend my life with you. I want Sophia to have a real mother. I want to build something real." Isabella turned to face him, eyes shining with tears. "Are you sure? I'm 43. I might not be able to have children. I have Sophia, and you love her like she's yours. That's enough for me. The question is it enough for you?" Isabella cried openly now. "It's more than enough. I love you. I love Sophia. I want to be part of your family. Then marry me." "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." They kissed. Warsaw spread below them, lights twinkling like stars. Victor didn't have a ring, didn't have a plan, had just asked. But sometimes the best moments are the unplanned ones. They married 6 months later. Small ceremony in Boston. Sophia as flower girl. A few close friends. No fuss. Just 2 people committing to build a life together, to see each other, to be family. Victor invited Helena's parents. They came, bringing Helena. She didn't understand what was happening, but she smiled and clapped when told to. Victor spoke with her before the ceremony, took her hands. "Helena, thank you. For Sophia, for teaching me to love. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but I'll make sure you're always cared for. I promise." Helena smiled cheerfully. "You look nice. I like your suit." It wasn't closure, but it was acceptance. During the ceremony, Victor looked at Isabella, his Isabella now, his wife, and realized life rarely follows a straight line. It's messy, tragic, painful, but it's also beautiful, surprising, full of second chances you never expected. He'd been a janitor. Now he was an executive. He'd been married to a ghost. Now he was married to a woman who saw him, and all because he answered a phone call. Life can change in an instant. You just have to be open to it. 2 years after that fateful phone call, Victor's life was rich in ways he'd never imagined. He and Isabella lived in a spacious house in Brookline with a view of the Charles River. Sophia had her own room, painted purple because it was her favorite color. There was an office for Victor, a yoga studio for Isabella, a garden where they had coffee on Sunday mornings. Sophia was 9 years old now, brilliant and happy. She spoke 4 languages fluently, wanted to be a diplomat or a chef, or both. They visited Helena 3 times a year. She still didn't recognize them, but she was happy, cared for, at peace. And that was what mattered. Victor had been promoted again, Executive Vice President of Global Expansion now. Isabella joked that soon he'd be CEO and she could retire. Never, he'd say. You love work too much. I used to love it more than anything. Now I love you and Sophia more. She'd pause. But yes, I still love work. They traveled together, to Paris and Prague and Budapest and beyond. Sometimes Sophia came. Sometimes she stayed with Helena's parents or Isabella's sister. They were a strange blended family, but it worked. On a Saturday morning in spring, Victor woke to find Isabella still sleeping beside him, hair spread on the pillow, face peaceful. He watched her for a moment, marveling at his luck, that a single phone call, a single moment of vulnerability, had transformed his entire life. Isabella opened her eyes, catching him staring. Creepy. You're beautiful. You say that every morning. Because it's true every morning. She smiled, pulling him closer. I love you, Victor Novak. I love you, Isabella Novak. She'd taken his name, not for tradition, but because she wanted to, because Marchand was the business name, Novak was the family name, and she wanted to be family. Sophia knocked on the door. Are you guys awake? I'm making pancakes. Sophia, you're 9 years old, Victor called. You can't use the stove alone. Too late. She ran downstairs laughing. Victor and Isabella raced after her, laughing too, and found the kitchen in chaos. Pancake batter everywhere. But Sophia stood proudly, holding a spatula, shouting, Chef Sophia at your service. They ate burned pancakes and laughed and made plans for the day. It was ordinary, normal, messy. It was perfect. That night, with Sophia asleep and the house quiet, Victor sat in his office reviewing contracts. Isabella entered with 2 glasses of wine. Still working. Almost done. She sat on his desk, handing him wine. Do you remember the day you answered that phone call in the lobby? How could I forget? Changed my entire life. Do you ever wonder why I was there, that exact day, that exact time? Victor paused. No. Why? Isabella smiled. Because Bruno called me. Told me a janitor was using his phone during work. Asked permission to fire you immediately. Victor's stomach dropped. You knew. I came down to see who it was, expecting to find someone lazy or disrespectful. She paused. And then I heard you, speaking perfect Polish, discussing linguistics academia, and I thought, why is this man a janitor? Victor stared at her. So you gave me the job out of pity? No, I gave you the job because you were qualified, because I genuinely needed someone, but also, she touched his face, because I remembered being lost, being overlooked, having people walk past me like I was invisible, and I thought, what if someone had seen me, given me a chance? So I gave you the chance I wished I'd had. Victor felt his throat tighten. You saved me. No, you saved yourself. You did the work, proved your worth, became indispensable. I just opened the door. You walked through it. They kissed, slow and deep. Thank you, Victor whispered, for seeing me. Thank you for letting me see you. They sat in the office, wine in hand, the life they'd built around them. Victor thought about Helena, about Sophia, about all the twisted paths that had led him here. Life wasn't a straight line. It was chaos and loss and struggle. but it was also hope and second chances and love you never saw coming. He'd been a janitor. Now he was an executive. He'd been married to a ghost. Now he was married to a woman who saw him, and all because he answered a phone call. The best things in life, Victor realized, often start with risks, with moments of vulnerability, with being seen when you feel invisible. He'd been seen, and it changed everything. 5 years after that phone call, Victor stood exactly where he'd always dreamed of being. He had his PhD in linguistics now, completed online over 3 years, published papers, gave lectures, was respected in both academic and corporate worlds, senior executive vice president of the Marchand Hotel Group, overseeing expansion in 16 countries. But more importantly, he was a husband, a father, a partner. Sophia was 12 now, brilliant and happy. She spoke 4 languages fluently, wanted to be a diplomat, or a chef, or both. Helena was still at the nursing home, stable and content. Victor visited 3 times a year, always bringing Sophia, always leaving flowers, always saying thank you. Isabella was by his side for everything, business partner, best friend, love of his life. They never had children together. Isabella tried for 2 years, but it didn't work. They considered adoption, but decided Sophia was enough, more than enough. Victor sometimes thought about how his life could have been different if he hadn't answered that call, if Bruno had fired him immediately, if Isabella hadn't been there that exact moment. But then he stopped thinking, because what if didn't matter. This happened, and he was grateful. He'd finally completed the circle that broke 7 years ago. He was living again. Isabella Novak, formerly Marchand. Isabella never thought she'd be a mother. At 47, she'd accepted that work was her family. Hotels were her children. Then Sophia entered her life, and everything changed. Being a mother to a 7-year-old, 9-year-old, 12-year-old, without the baby years, without the sleepless nights, was perfect for her. She could be mom in the way that worked, helping with homework, teaching languages, having real conversations. Sophia called her mom Bella, and Isabella cried every time at first, because she never thought anyone would call her mom. Victor was her partner in every way. They co-ran the company. Technically, she was still CEO, but they made all decisions together. Co-parented Sophia, co-built a life. She still worked too much, still loved business. But now when she came home, there were people there. Laughter, love, mess. There was life. She'd transformed her company from empire to legacy, established scholarships for employees' children, created benefits for single parents, implemented flexible work policies, because she remembered being invisible, being forgotten, and she'd make sure nobody in her company felt that way. In interviews, when asked about her success, she always said, "See the people everyone's ignoring. That's where you find gold." And she'd tell Victor's story, the janitor who spoke 6 languages, who everyone overlooked, until she saw him. It was her favorite story, because it was the story that gave her a family. Sophia didn't remember much from before Bella. She remembered Daddy looking tired always, remembered being rushed to Mrs. Chen's every night. But after was different. After, Daddy smiled more. They lived in a bigger house. She had 2 parents, sort of. Mom Helena didn't know her, but that was okay. Sophia still visited, still loved her, just differently. Mom Bella knew her, taught her, laughed at her jokes, cheered loudest at her school plays. Sophia had 2 mothers, one who gave birth to her, one who raised her. Both were important. At 12 years old, Sophia wrote an essay for school titled Family. She wrote, "Family isn't just blood. It's who stays, who sees you, who chooses to love you every day. I'm lucky because I have many people who do that." Her teacher cried reading it. Sophia wanted to be like her parents when she grew up, someone who saw people, who gave chances, who built bridges instead of walls. She spoke Polish, English, French, and Spanish, was learning Mandarin, because Daddy said languages were bridges. And Sophia wanted to build many bridges. She had a good life, a family who loved her, a bright future, and all because her dad answered a phone call one day. Sophia never forgot that sometimes small moments change everything. So she paid attention to small moments, because you never know which one will change your life. Bruno was fired 2 years after Victor was promoted, not for revenge, but because Isabella discovered he'd been harassing junior employees, making inappropriate comments, using power to intimidate. "You're terminated, Mr. Costa," Isabella said coldly, "and you're lucky I'm not pressing charges." Bruno tried to argue, tried to blame others, but Isabella wasn't listening. Security escorted him out. Victor watched from his office window, feeling nothing, no satisfaction, no anger, just indifference. Bruno was irrelevant now. Victor had moved on, up and beyond. Last Victor heard, Bruno was managing a small motel near the airport. Still bitter. Still blaming the world. Some people never learn. Helena lived. That was all. She didn't remember her past life, didn't remember Victor or Sophia or her dreams, but she was happy at the nursing home. She liked gardens, liked birds, liked puzzles. Her parents cared for her. Victor paid all bills. Sophia visited. She didn't know she'd once been married, once been a mother, once designed buildings and dreamed of the future. But maybe that was mercy. She lived in the present. No regrets, no loss, just peaceful, simple existence. And when Victor visited, she smiled, not because she recognized him, but because he was kind. "You're nice," she'd say, and Victor always replied, "So are you." It was all that remained, but it was enough. Professor Kowalski remembered that phone call, the call with the janitor who spoke perfect Polish. He'd accepted Victor into the program. Victor completed his master's with honors, then his PhD. Victor was now a guest lecturer at the university, sponsored scholarships, funded research. "You became more than I expected," Professor Kowalski said once. "You gave me the chance," Victor replied. "Thank you for not hanging up." Small moments, calls answered, doors opened. They changed lives. 10 years after that phone call, Victor stood in the lobby of the Sterling Grand Hotel, not as janitor, as honored guest. The hotel was hosting an international hospitality conference. Victor was keynote speaker. He stood on the same marble floors he once scrubbed, stood near the same column where he'd once hidden to answer his phone. Isabella stood beside him, proud. Sophia sat in the audience, bored but supportive. During his speech, Victor told his story, about being a janitor, about the call, about Isabella seeing him when nobody else did. "Opportunity," he said, "rarely looks like opportunity. Often it looks like disaster, like suspension, like the wrong moment in the wrong place. But if you're open, if you're brave, those moments can change everything." The audience applauded. After, a young woman approached him. She wore a cleaning uniform, nervous eyes. "Mr. Novak, can I talk to you?" "Of course. What's your name?" "Amara. I'm on the cleaning staff, but I have a degree in engineering from my country, but nobody recognizes it here, and I have kids, so I can't go back to school, and..." She was holding paper, a resume. "I just thought, maybe you could look, just quick." Victor took the resume. "Read it." Her education was impressive, but foreign degrees were hard to validate, and single immigrant mothers were often invisible. He looked at Isabella. She was watching, smiling. He knew that smile. "Amara," Victor said, "can you come to the 12th floor on Monday? 9 a.m. I'm working..." "Not anymore. You're starting a new position. Assistant Facilities Engineer. Office hours 9 to 5. Starting Monday." Amara stared. You're serious?" "Completely." She started crying. Thank you. You don't know what this means." "I know," Victor said quietly. "I know exactly." He handed her his business card. She left, dazed and grateful. Isabella approached, linking her arm through his. "You can't give jobs to everyone who asks." "No, but I can give to someone, like you did for me. You're going to start a collection of rescued employees. Maybe." Someone has to see them. Isabella kissed his cheek. That's my husband. Seeing people. I learned from the best. They left the conference hand in hand. Sophia running ahead. A strange, beautiful family. And Victor Novak, who'd once been invisible, who'd once scrubbed those floors, who'd once thought his life was over. He looked back and saw how far he'd come. One phone call, one moment of vulnerability, one person who stopped to see. It changed everything, and now he'd spend the rest of his life doing the same for others. Seeing the invisible, giving chances, building bridges, because he remembered being the janitor nobody saw, until someone did, and it made all the difference.